One of the largest and most powerful trade relationships in human history is undoubtedly indeed facing a significant change. This change could even impact the daily lives of millions of people. In 2022, just one country, Canada, exported $459 billion worth of goods to the United States. And now US President Donald Trump has threatened to impose a 25% tariff on all these goods. So what impact could this news have on the lives of people in the US and Canada? Is this a big joke, or are we really going to witness a massive economic crisis? What has caused these two longtime neighbors and trade allies to drift apart like this? Join me to find the answers to these questions, because today I intend to reveal the secrets behind this dispute for you. Of course, before I absolutely start, I wanted to tell you that if you enjoy captivating and fascinating stories filled with shocking information about our world today and intriguing tales like this video, please leave a comment below and turn on channel notifications so you don't miss any new videos. But let's get back to today's topic. Everything started with Trump's economic promises. When Trump entered the election, one of his most important promises was that he wanted to reform America's trade relations. In fact, one of the major issues raised was the existence of low tariffs and imports from various countries, which, according to Trump, had put pressure on the American economy. Especially since imports from Canada to the US had increased significantly, these threats became more recent. One of Trump's main reasons for imposing these tariffs was the trade imbalance between the two countries. He always pointed out that the US imports significantly more from Canada than it sells and exports to this country. In fact, Canada is actually among the largest and most significant exporters of oil to the US, having exported approximately about 4 million barrels of crude oil per day in recent years, which accounts for more than 50% of US oil imports. In addition to oil, Canada also exports lumber, steel, aluminum, natural gas, electricity, automobiles, and agricultural products to the US. However, the tariffs on these imported goods are very low. Trump has also stated that this is somewhat unfair and should be countered. Therefore, one of Trump's plans is to raise tariffs, which could indeed lead to higher prices within the US. But on the other hand, Trump claims that it will benefit domestic production in the US. But does Trump really want to turn Canada into the 51st state of the US? This is one of the main questions we want to answer today. Of course, I should mention that this is not something entirely new. William McKinley applied exactly the same approach to Canada in 1890. At that time, he was a member of the US House of Representatives. But a few years later, between 1897 and 1901, he became the President of the United States. In 1901, he became the President of the United States. However, in the 1890s, especially after the passage of the McKinley Tariff, US trade relations with other countries, including Canada, became strained. This law significantly increased the import tariffs on goods entering the US. Canada, which relied on exporting goods like timber, wheat, and raw materials to the US, suffered significant losses. The Canadians were quite upset and, in response, increased their own tariffs on American goods. This led to a small trade war between them, but McKinley, as a proponent of economic protectionism, believed that imposing high tariffs would boost domestic industry in the US. However, this worsened trade relations with the US and even sparked discussions about further severing cooperation. Now, if we want to refer to the issue of Trump, you should know that the differences between the US and Canada are not limited to just a trade war. Many in Canada are upset about Trump's rudeness. They are upset that Trump constantly refers to Canada as the 51st state of the US and considered its prime minister, who just recently left office, as a governor. They say, why is he so rude? Even his behavior in front of the television cameras was somewhat strange.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember this. You're in no position to dictate.
Very elegantly and formally, it is telling Canada, which is the second largest country in the world, to come and be mine. Now this is a compliment, but the Canadians do not accept it. Canada is full of oil and energy resources. The Canadians also say to it, we have always been together in wars, in Afghanistan, everywhere. Why are you doing this? Of course, we must also consider that these threats and controversial opinions may never come to fruition. They might just be a tactic or even a political game. During this time, Trump has said one day that he will impose tariffs, and the next day, he says he won't. On the Canadian side, they have said, now that you are imposing tariffs, we will increase the tariffs on the electric appliances from Eastern America that we send to you from Ontario, Canada. In short, both are in conflict. They speak the same language and are close. They have the largest shared border, but they are in crisis. Now let's get a bit more detailed. For example, a truck driver who used to transport Canadian goods like berries and car parts to the US 4 to 5 times a day has said that if tariffs are implemented, this transportation will decrease and drivers' working hours will be reduced. He says, I have a wife and 2 daughters, and now I have to consider that maybe we won't travel this year or perhaps we won't buy what we wanted. I'm even thinking about this. I'm thinking that I might have to change my job. Now let's go to America. In Washington, D.C., some Republicans have criticized Trump's tariff policies. A senator has said that almost all industries have told me that these tariffs harm them and increase the prices of houses and cars in America. Therefore, it is crucial to understand that the point to consider is that tariffs are never advantageous to either side. In fact, these decisions can have a more direct impact on the lives of ordinary people. That's why the Canadian government, concerned about the effects of these tariffs on Canadians, is preparing support packages to help Canadian companies and people during this crisis. However, this support might not be sufficient because Canada is currently grappling with serious economic issues itself, and any additional pressure could push the country into an economic crisis. On the other hand, this crisis also affects the prices of goods and services in the United States. The U.S. stock market, which plummeted unexpectedly, impacts the prices of oil, raw materials, and even vehicles imported from Canada and the United States are increasing. Some models of the Ford brand in Oakville, Ontario, some models of General Motors or GM, the Chrysler Charger Challenger cars, and some models of the Toyota RAV4, as well as Honda. Therefore, if these tariffs are imposed, probably neither side can be the winner of this game because both sides will suffer significant damage. Of course, there are different opinions on this matter. Many analysts believe that in the long run, Americans can benefit more from the tariffs, and this situation is more detrimental to Canada. Of course, we should not forget that Canada is directly dependent on the United States. Approximately 7.7% of the goods that Canada exports go to the United States. This means that if the tariffs remain like this, with each side saying every day that they will increase the other's tariffs, Canada will find itself in a position where it has to face significant damages, especially when we consider that oil exports, particularly from Canada to the United States, are among Canada's main sources of income. Since other countries are far away, how is it going to sell this oil to them? Considering the cost of doing so, consider the logic. Then the United States is the closest country to which Canada can sell its products. Of course, Canada hasn't just sat idly by. Since it has been considered the most reliable source of energy for the US for years, it has stated that if necessary, it won't increase or decrease tariffs. Instead, it will cut off electricity exports to the US and send the eastern US into darkness. In fact, during a press conference on March 2, 2025, Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, stirred controversy with his remarks, saying that if the Trump administration insists on these unfair tariffs, we will also play our trump cards. The option of cutting electricity exports is on the table, and if necessary, we will do it with a smile. It's interesting to know that Canadian electricity is particularly important for the northern regions of the United States. For example, the states of New York and Vermont are heavily dependent on Canadian hydroelectric power. Official data shows that U.S. electricity imports from Canada in 2023 were about $2.3 billion. This cheap and clean electricity has helped many families pay lower electricity bills. Now, if Canada were to shut off this supply, electricity costs in some states would skyrocket and even shortages might occur. However, the White House's reaction to this issue was also interesting. The White House spokesperson said that Canada is a close friend and ally, but these tariffs are imposed solely for reasons of national security and fair trade. We are closely monitoring retaliatory threats, but the United States will not back down. But in the meantime, what does Trump mean when he says these tariffs will ultimately benefit America? Well, President Trump always moves forward with the slogan, America First, meaning that the priority is always America first, then other countries and our allies. This slogan, in relation to the trade war between the US and Canada, means that the US government is doing everything it can to increase its domestic production and, in turn, reduce imports. Therefore, these tariffs might initially be detrimental to Americans. Because if Canada stops its exports to the US, the prices of some goods in America could rise sharply, as many industries rely on Canadian raw and semi-finished materials. Additionally, many jobs in the US could be lost because companies that need Canadian raw materials might go bankrupt or reduce their production. Even America's dependency on other countries like China and Europe might increase. However, in the long term, these challenges and tariffs might lead to the creation of more jobs in America, because American companies will be forced to increase their domestic production to counteract the effects of tariffs, such as dealing with the rising prices of imported goods. If I want to share my own opinion on this matter with you, I must say that unfortunately, I also think that this economic war will end up being more detrimental to Canada. Of course, this is still not certain, but given Canada's dependency on America and Canada's weaker economy compared to America, this country will likely have to bear heavier costs. But I would like to know your opinion as well. Which side do you think will ultimately benefit? Be sure to write it in the comment section. But ultimately, I have to say that this story has a big lesson for all of us. In the world of global trade, you can never have complete trust in anyone. This means that none of the major countries in the world can fully trust each other, and trade relations are always accompanied by challenges and threats. Nevertheless, in the end, the impacts of such decisions mostly harm the lives of people and the economy. Furthermore, additionally, it should be taken into consideration that in global and economic policies, any decision made can have profound consequences for other countries. Therefore, it might be time for different countries, even if they are neighbors and allies, to exercise more meticulous precision in their relations in various aspects to prevent any kind of economic crisis. Be sure not to forget to write your opinion in the comments section, and if you haven't liked this video, make sure to like it and share it with your friends who are interested in this topic.